Bhagavad Gita. Anyone needs an introduction to Bhagavad Gita? Everyone's familiar, more or less? Bhagavad Gita is literally known all over the world. There must be some parts of the world they don't know, but in China they know. I was just in China. Translated into Chinese long ago, and many volumes are circulated in China. The topic, the title of what I'd like to speak about is Gita values, and the term comes from a devotee named Adipurusha. Adipurusha Das is a teacher who lives in Vrindavan, and for years and years and years, maybe two and a half decades, he's been teaching the devotional texts, and especially Bhagavad Gita. And I wasn't there, but he was requested to visit the Potomac Temple, because the Potomac Temple president lived for years and years and years and years, and as a teacher in the Vrindavan Gurukul. Now she's the temple president at the Potomac Temple. Adipurusha, by her invitation, came and gave a week-long seminar on Bhagavad Gita, and he called it Gita Values. And it was his assimilation of the subject matter of Bhagavad Gita in very simple terms. Six values that are universal values, of wisdom literature. I like the word wisdom literature. Rather than in China, rather than saying scripture, we say wisdom literature. It's euphemistic. It can mean almost anything. It's okay. Wisdom literature, it has universal values. Of course, the very first of them is very specific about the soul distinct from the body. So Sama-darsana is the first of those 6 Gita values. So because I just recently discussed Sama-darsana with devotees from Singapore, so I thought I'd do Gita values number 2. So values has its place within spiritual culture, and a nice way to illustrate the positioning of values in spiritual culture is the iceberg of culture. There's another nice devotee who, Kaunteya Prabhu, who had received a PhD in, I forget what the topic was, something to do with sociology. And he learned this, so he shared this with me and with us. The iceberg of culture. For example, when a corporation buys out another corporation, one of the first things they want to do is take a look at the culture of the organization. And they do some re-engineering of the culture of the organization. So this model comes from that. The iceberg of culture. So in an iceberg, there's 3 main parts. The surface above the water, the part that's visible, and then a large piece that's just below the surface of the water, and then the very bottom. So in the iceberg of culture, there's what is called in this system, they call artifacts. It's behaviors, symbols, observable features of a culture. it can be art or architecture or behaviors or norms or things that are expected of people and perceivable, measurable features of a culture, of people or a group of people or a country or something. Artifacts. And then just below what's noticeable or perceivable or measurable is the values of an organization. Let's say, for example, one company buys out another company. They go through the exercise of making a mission statement. And essentially, it's like, when Prabhupada incorporated ISKCON, it's what the state of New York required is a statement of your main beliefs, because it was a religious corporation. So the 7 principles of ISKCON, that's its mission statement, its values. And values drive behaviors, and certainly behaviors can impact values, especially over time. You change behaviors and it may change the values of a person or group of persons. And at the very bottom is assumptions or deeply held beliefs, unchallenged certainties, like, for example, for Bhagavad Gita, we're spirit souls. So Sankhya. There's matter, and then there's that which animates matter, the soul. And it's an unchanging certainty. If you don't have the soul, you don't have life. The iceberg of culture includes these 3 things, and we're going to be focusing on values, but values then establish and drive and help determine behaviors, and it's a central part of the spiritual culture of Bhagavad Gita. In chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, knowledge of the Absolute, many of you know the structure. The very first verse of chapter 13, Arjuna asks 6 questions. And it turns out that it's spirit and matter, spirit and matter, spirit and matter. Because that's essential. It's an essential part of knowing Bhagavad Gita, or knowing spiritual life, is spirit and matter. So, nature, Prakriti, and Purusha, spirit and matter. Knowledge and the object of knowledge, Jnanam and Gyayam. So there's, in knowledge, there's a distinction in knowledge and wisdom and just information. So Bhagavad Gita, for example, it has lots of information, but it's not just information. It's wisdom. It's a wisdom literature. And wisdom literature presents knowledge of who you are and what's around you, and the relationship between nature and you and other living beings and the source of everything. There's Sambandha Gyan. There's knowledge and wisdom, and then it's character. One who lives by what they know, that's character. However, sometimes there's a big gap between what we know and the ideal, the platform of wisdom. It's like chanting. Many of us chant japa. And then there's Shuddhanam, that's pure chanting. Whoops, for you it's over this side. Shuddhanam, and there's where we are. There's a big gap between where we are and what we know. And the reason for this slide is the values themselves are quite high, because it's the position of one who's situated like a sage and situated in wisdom. So we may not be sages yet. Long way to go. But that's okay. That gap between where we are and where we want to go, may be vast, but the process of yoga is there's something that helps us get there, or someone that helps us get there, and that's Krishna. So the Krishna factor is very important in understanding Bhagavad Gita and in understanding wisdom as opposed to information. So this is to help us get there. Slide. The first Gita value was Sama-darsana. Sama-darsana, seeing with equal vision. And that the topic in general was there's many, so many differences. It's real easy to see differences. But where's the sama part of the equality or equal vision? Or seeing others with equal vision and interacting with others with equal vision when there's so many differences. And the simple answer is you have to see the soul. Because if you don't see the soul, you only see differences of the coverings, species of life and language and culture and colors and coverings. So it's a principle, it's a value of Bhagavad Gita, is to see and to relate with others as spirit souls. Recognizing the differences and in an appropriate manner dealing with the differences, but all the while you're dealing with differences, being mindful of the sameness, the spiritual essence that's the basis and foundation of life. So that's a value in Gita, and it's a value that through the process of yoga, it's meant to awaken it and develop it and make it central to one's life. Sama-darsana. Then Ahimsa is another value. Now this list of 6, it could be a much longer list, but this is Adipurusha's list, and it's a good list. So nonviolence is a principle or a value that's taught in Bhagavad Gita. In history, there's lots of strife and discord, and not just people disagreeing, but violence, and it's not over yet. Continuing to the present. So, how do we have nonviolence in the midst of all that? Why does violence happen to begin with? That's a good question. And how is it related or not related to the previous one, equal vision, Sama-darsana? Overemphasis on form and de-emphasis on substance. One way of defining ahimsa is its negation. To act in a way that causes the least harm. Do we want the light on? I think not. Can you turn it off? I probably can see the screen better that way. Okay. Okay, great. Very good. Why don't you sit down? Okay. By our very existence, other living entities suffer. And if you breathe, most of us breathe. If you breathe, other living entities are being sacrificed just by your breathing, or by your walking, or your drinking water, or other living entities are sacrificing their lives. So how to live your life in such a way that the least harm is inflicted upon others, that's ahimsa, the principle of ahimsa. In one sense, then, nonviolence means avoiding violence at every level, not just physical. verbal, emotional, etc., etc., etc. Physical, verbal, emotional, look at that. At every level. Avoiding inflicting harm or suffering or violence upon others is nonviolence. But Bhagavad Gita presents a different perspective, a deeper perspective for that matter. What does Bhagavad Gita say? Do we have Bhagavad Gita scholars here that know what Bhagavad Gita says? What nonviolence is? Nonviolence is generally taken to mean not killing or destroying the body, but actually nonviolence means not to put others, oneself also, into distress. Now this is chapter 13. As I mentioned, chapter 13, it's the 6 questions, in Jnanam and Gayam, knowledge and the object of knowledge. So in the object of knowledge, in the knowledge category, there's Ahimsa. And when Prabhupada explains it in his purport, the normal, the customary, the traditional way of thinking of nonviolence is not inflicting suffering upon others. Not to put others in distress. People in general are trapped by ignorance in the material concept of life, and they perpetually suffer material pains. The classic stick your head in the sand. That's what the image is meant to show. So if someone doesn't know who they are, and they continue living their life not knowing who they are, then naturally they're going to suffer, because how can they be happy if they don't even know who they are? What to speak of then bringing happiness to who you really are? Therefore, people don't know what actually benefits them and what is beneficial for human society in general. This is Bhagavad Gita chapter 10. So if something can be done, and something can be done, Bhagavad Gita does that something to relieve that unnatural and unnecessary, it's kind of like a diseased condition, unhealthy condition, not knowing who you are, trying to find happiness, not finding happiness, instead finding something other than happiness, other than what real happiness is. So the human body is meant for spiritualization. So any movement or any commissions which do not further that end commit violence on the human body. That which furthers the future spiritual happiness of the people in general is called nonviolence. Yes? Supposing I'm a medical doctor, and I am done for the day and walking along the sidewalk, and I see somebody writhing on the sidewalk in pain, and I don't do anything. There may be different reasons why I don't do anything. If there was a mishap, my insurance doesn't cover me and I would be sued, and so I just walk on, my little black bag in hand, and don't do anything. That's the kind of violence that's being spoken of, when others are suffering and you know the remedy for that suffering and you don't do anything. It's a kind of violence. And non-violence is you do something. You relieve that which is their suffering by introducing them or giving them the opportunity for real happiness. And when there is spiritual ignorance, that's not knowing who you really are, then that alienates one person against another person, or one group against another group of persons, one community, one nation, one race, one something. I'll tell a little Prabhupada story. It's via Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Now, some of you may not know who is Bhakti Tirtha Swami. Bhaktitirtha Swami was an African-American devotee. And when he was in high school, America was in a state where they wanted to, it was kind of a trend, of a fashion, as something that was considered important. The rights of African American people, indigenous African American people, was a big thing. So what happened was the Ivy League schools gave full scholarship to someone that came from a ghetto that had academic capacity. So Bhaktitirtha Swami received a full scholarship to Princeton University. Princeton University is a good school, right? Yeah. And not only he got entrance into the school, but he was the valedictorian of his graduating class, and he was the president of his graduating class. The student president, an African-American student president at Princeton University, the valedictorian. Brilliant young man. Leadership qualities like anything. And I know, because I went to college around the same time, it was people that had that capacity. They were on a trajectory for fame and success and notoriety, and what to speak of a Princeton University graduate. Well, something happened. Some of us from New York went to visit different universities, as I've liked to do for many, many years. In fact, it's where we met, at Purdue University. And we sent some book distributors to Princeton, and he received an Ishopanishad, and he read it, and he really liked it. And so he found out about the nearest center. At that time, it was in New York, and he found out by contacting New York Center that Prabhupada was coming to visit. So he went to visit the Brooklyn Temple and see Srila Prabhupada, and he met Prabhupada, and he became his disciple. He left that trajectory of fame and stardom to become a Hare Krishna guy. And after some time, because he was such a luminary in his brilliance and leadership, etc., he had the opportunity to meet with Prabhupada privately, and he informed Prabhupada that in the Hare Krishna movement there's racial prejudice, because he wasn't expecting it, because an organization that teaches you're not the body, you're spirit soul, how's it going to be racial prejudice anyways? Because we're not the body, we're spirit soul. And it was a big deal for him, being an African American leader, leaving his stardom behind and becoming a humble brahmachari. So anyway, he shared this with Srila Prabhupada in private. It was a big deal, like how's the world Acharya going to respond to this one? In your organization, there's racial discrimination. It wasn't challenging, it was letting him know. And Prabhupada's answer convinced him that he should continue his life in devotion. Prabhupada said, that's not good. But if you're disturbed by racial discrimination, it means you're no better than they are. Now, that's not something you tell a modern person. If you're disturbed by those with bodily conception of life, that means you're in bodily conception of life. You're thinking you're African American when you're not African American, you're spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. You know better than they are. Wasn't. Anyway, Bhaktitirtha Swami wasn't bringing it up to criticize, and Prabhupada wasn't responding to criticize. He was shaking him and awakening him to not be in the bodily conception. But spiritual ignorance alienates people. It can Whatever the context is within a family, it can alienate people for simply on that basis of not knowing who you are, not knowing who the other person is, and having clash or conflict over the differences. Is it clear? Spiritual ignorance is the foundation for violence at any level. So if you want nonviolence, then you have to remove spiritual ignorance. That's the implication. Ahimsa means that people should be trained in such a way that the full utilization of the human body can be achieved. So that's further, like not just helping them go beyond the bodily conception, but in the spiritual conception. How to utilize the body, the temporary, fully with a spiritual mission. That's bhakti. Let's do it again. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhakti Uchate. There are two texts that are definitions of bhakti. What I just said is one of them. And it starts, Sarva Upadi Vinirmuktam Tat Paratvena Nirmalam. Upadi means designation. Like, here's a designation. I'm a sannyasi. I'm not a sannyasi. If you're not a sannyasi, what are you? So we're not the covering. Someone's not a grahasta, kiba vipra, kiba nyasi, sudra, kena nyoy. We're not the covering or designation of the body or the soul within. Although we're not the body or the soul within, we can utilize, we're awarded the human form of life to utilize it properly in achieving higher consciousness and achieving spiritual consciousness. So the proper actual utilization of the human form of life is very important, although we're not the body. Any of you familiar with Marshall Rosenberg? Marshall Rosenberg, two people. Okay. It has become an institution in America. In this, the Arizona, I think, is where his base was. He's now deceased. But nonviolent communication, it developed an acronym, NVC. He wrote books, he taught seminars. And in the videos that I've seen, he has these two. There's a giraffe and a jackal. And the harsh speech or the violent speech is the jackal. And the nonviolent speech is the giraffe. He explains giraffes, not only their bodies are big, but they're in proportion to their body, their heart's really big. So it's the animal with the big heart. It's the giraffe. That's the nonviolent communicator. So he role plays, here's an issue, and here's what the jackal says, and here's what the giraffe says. And even if the jackal says to the giraffe something that's harsh, here's how the giraffe responds. Nonviolent communication. So he teaches the principles of, and it's a Bhagavad Gita teaching. It's a Gita value. You can look it up later if you have a Bhagavad Gita, 17:15. Speech in the mode of goodness. Where it doesn't agitate others. Speech in the mode of goodness. It's meant to elevate, not to agitate. So this nonviolent communication was studied for some years by Bir Krishna Maharaj, because he understood the value of it, and he studied it for the purpose of learning how to Krishnaize the teaching, because Marshall Rosenberg was a Buddhist, and he was into nonviolent communication, Ahimsa communication. But it wasn't Krishna-based, so Bir Krishna Maharaj made it Krishna-based and then wrote a book and called the book Empathic Communication. And I invited him to our Gita Nagari community, our farm community, twice for a Memorial Day weekend seminar. And he gave the seminar twice, part one, part two. And some devotees really liked it, and now they're teaching it around the world because it's for a devotee's life, for a yogi, for a practitioner of yoga, to learn communication that's in the mode of goodness, the nonviolent communication is very important, and how to Krishnaize it so it's completely for the satisfaction of Krishna. It's a very essential part of our bhakti life. Okay, so now comes a little interactive session. Think of a situation in your life where you felt non-acceptance, either of yourself or of others. And when that situation came up, how did you feel? How did you respond or react to that situation? Now, I don't have to do this, but I think it's nice to do it. I didn't ask you to bring paper, but everybody has one of those little doodads in your hand. A mobile phone or a cell phone. So take a couple minutes. I'll pause and stop talking. And literally write it down, because it helps when you write something down. It doesn't just stay in the mind and then it floats away. It helps you remember it. You have a phone? Really? You have some paper? He has some paper. Boy, does he have paper. Look at this. So take some time. There's a second part that just appeared on the screen. What were your feelings? The chart that's on the right here is a sociologist named Maslow, and it's the hierarchy of needs, because a big part of nonviolent communication or empathic communication is to acknowledge what your needs are and don't expect others to meet your needs, but to make a strategy how you can have your needs met. So there's hierarchy of needs, and if some need isn't met, then it's stressful. Behind any negative emotion, there's an unmet need. This is the principle of nonviolent communication. So what need was unmet when you felt the negative emotion in that situation? What was the most important need that you had at that time? The idea is to turn it around with your life experience by nonviolent communication or Ahimsa communication. Close your eyes, look at yourself as a bird that's sitting in a cage trying to get all of your needs met by others. How does that feel? Doesn't feel comfortable. Disempowering. And many people lead their lives that way, unfortunately. I'm going to offer some explanation and then see if there's some discussion on this topic. The last place I was in China before I came to California was in Shanghai. Big city, big city. And because it's such a big city, it's one of the first places that Krishna consciousness took hold in mainland China, because Tamal Krishna Maharaj was asked or instructed by Prabhupada to go to introduce Krishna consciousness in Chinese or in China. So he made Hong Kong his base, because in Hong Kong we could have a temple. There is a temple in Hong Kong. You can't have that in mainland. So from Hong Kong he did what he did, and Shanghai is not far from Hong Kong, and so it was one of the first places that became developed. Now many things have changed. Tamal Krishna Maharaj isn't around, that's one of them. And post-pandemic and so many things, and the government and so many things, it's different. Landscape is different. So when I was there last, just before coming here, there was kind of a much smaller gathering, maybe 20 people, 25 people. That some new people, some people that have been around for 20, 25 years. And so it was kind of like just an istagosti, just discussing. And one of the ladies, I don't even know her name, but I've seen her around for a long time. I asked her, is there anything that you'd like to discuss? She sat back, she was called on, so she looked at her husband, she looked at me, she thought a bit, and went into this feeling disempowered monologue. It was in Chinese, so it was translated by a translator. But she felt disempowered because it's not what it used to be. And what it used to be was, she was in the front line of helping to further Krishna Bhakti, largely on the strength of other people who were helping to further Krishna Bhakti. And when that subsided, she didn't know what to do. And she felt disempowered and lost, and not frustrated, but not feeling vitalized. So I spent some time, and I asked the local leader, was I too strong? And he said, no, it was very good. But if you're waiting for your needs to be met by others, you thereby are disempowering yourself. Rather, fundamental core to nonviolent communication is know what your needs are. This chart that you saw, the hierarchy of needs, and make a strategy, a way by which you can take responsibility for your needs. Like in the stages of practice, in many cases, we're dependent upon and looking to those who have very strong and well-developed faith. However, at a certain stage of spiritual development, that faith then becomes your faith. And in the strength of your faith and your enthusiasm, you go forward and do things that are in accord with the boundaries of disciplic succession, but boundaries of bhakti life, but it's not dependent upon someone else fanning that spark. It's something that's alive within you. And bhakti life is meant to do that. Human life is meant to do that. And bhakti life especially. So if needs are being, if I live my life with the expectation other people are going to meet my needs, it's disempowering. It feels disempowering. It doesn't have to be like that. And now, so why is this important for nonviolent communication? We'll get there. We already touched on it, but we'll expand on it a little bit more. Any comments so far, specific to this, what's on the slide, on the screen here? Yeah.
No, okay. So thinking of this woman in China that was saying this, but we hear so much, right? That sadhu sangha is so important, and also being around and serving advanced devotees, people that are farther along on the path than you. So I'm just trying to reconcile, meeting your own needs, but at the same time, we all know it's so important to have association.
Yes. So it's succession. We talked about it on the way in, succession. Prabhupada was with us, and in Prabhupada's presence, he generated enthusiasm. And then Prabhupada departed. And it was a major crying loss, but we had to continue. And so that meant those that are carrying enthusiasm that they received from him, now without his sadhu sangha, we would read his books and have Prabhupada memories and ways of recalling, the inspirations that we received and rekindle it. But ultimately it was dependent upon us to carry it forward. And the same thing was this scene in China. So what I said to her is, you're the future. You have to, that enthusiasm is not from others, it's from you. And so there are other very senior devotees in Shanghai. So come together. The means, they don't have temples, they can't have temples. So the means of coming together has to be, according to their local situation. And same thing's going to happen all around. Prabhupada disciples in the next decade or so will be gone. And then what? What's the plan? So yes, sadhu sangha is needed, but sadhu sangha doesn't mean necessarily the same people that came to Shanghai some years ago. It's, now the people that, like Hershey, 20, 25 years have been practicing bhakti. They're the sadhus, and those sadhus should get together and katayantas chamam nityam tushanti charamanti cha, and be the spark plugs to give life to others that are new. That's succession, generation after generation. That's the sadhu sangha plan for those people. You have something? Yeah.
So does that mean that Sadhu Sangha can also come to Shastra? Like from Acharya's books, like Govinda Vashi and all those other books. Can Sadhu Sangha come from them?
Yes. Sadhu sangha can come from within the room, and not just, a sannyasi who comes to visit. I mean, a really nice example, just in the temple program today. How old are you?
15.
15. How old was that young man who spoke? 13. 13-year-old. No, he was asked to speak on something, so he prepared something, and it was awesome. He asked tough questions and then gave answers to his realizations on those tough questions. It was really good, very thoughtful. But he's a young, budding sadhu. I mean, he's not fully matured yet, but so how did he get there? By sadhu sangha. And so he's going to become a person who others will hear from, because he has some realization to share, and thoughtfulness. So sadhu sangha, sadhu simply means, in Prabhupada's words, it means devotee. One who's living their life as the teachings of devotion tell us. They know what the teachings are, and they live their life accordingly. Those two things, knowledge and application of knowledge. Jnana vijnana. That's a sadhu. What we're doing here, I mean, when there's gatherings, doesn't mean there has to be a presiding VIP over that gathering. And when there's gatherings, that's sadhu sangha. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. What a wonderful discussion so far.
I'm not done yet.
Yes, so far. So I found this discussion very empowering, and the most important thing that I really liked in this discussion so far is like how one should be like familiar and know like what their needs are, right, and not like depend on themselves for fulfilling those needs, and doing so realizing the true nature of ourselves, which is not body but the soul, and then the needs will come from that. The question I had was if we firmly believe and have that conviction that we are not body but the soul, then what is the significance of actually understanding the values, needs, right? Because needs are still at the body level.
Well, although we're not the body, we have one. Supposing you didn't eat. Problem. Supposing you didn't sleep. That's not going to happen, because we're going to sleep. Anyway, the body and the mind, our emotions, those three categories, they're needs. So you meet them. Although there's not who I am, that's a requirement. And then how do I meet them, and what are the boundaries and parameters, and what's theistic conduct to meet them? So that's another reason why I should read, so I know what's the boundaries. So there's the bird cage again. Go back to that situation, look at yourself and others in that situation as spirit souls. Now this is the previous Gita value, seeing others as spirit souls. The body that you and others are in, the resultant emotions, everyone's needs, are coverings. It's called the field of activities. Kshetra and Kshetragya. Kshetragya is the knower of the Kshetra, and Kshetra is the field of activities. So the field of activities and its interactions are all those things that may be needs, but they're not us. Now from this sacred meditative space, that's the bird that's no longer in the cage, please see how you vision, this is wrong, your vision of yourself, others, and the situation change from non-acceptance to acceptance, respect, and service. The idea is if someone, whoever that person or situation was, that you felt non-acceptance, see them as spirit soul. So immediately, there's a transformation inside yourself of acceptance of yourself and acceptance of them. And what is a way in which I can serve this situation or this person? Look at meeting your needs from this sacred space where expectations and frustrations are replaced with a mood of respect and service. This is an essential part of Ahimsa. So do it again. If I don't know who I am, is disempowering. And if I act as if my needs, whatever they are, physical or spiritual or emotional, have to be met by others, that's further disempowering. But if I understand who I am, that's a big step. And then through understanding who I am, have a better understanding of others on a spiritual platform. But I may recognize I have my physical needs or emotional needs and they have theirs, etc. So how can I be of service? Because ultimately the service is unto Krishna, but it's unto the part and parcel of Krishna, who's you please the child of the parent, and you please the parent. Full realization of our spiritual nature is to become connected to the real us. And the real us is connected to the source. We don't exist as sparks. We're sparks of a fire. We're parts of the whole. And when we recognize our connection with the whole, then it's easy to see the connection of another with the whole. It's natural. And then we can start having wholesome relationships. Once connected in that way, the humble sage, this is the previous value, by virtue of true knowledge, see with equal vision, a learned and gentle Brahmana, cow, elephant, dog, and dog eater. On the Ahimsa topic, so they connect. Nonviolence to oneself and family has a concentric circle going out to community, to nation, to humanity, to all species of life. But it starts with nonviolence to self, and then the immediate extensions of self, family, community, etc. Now, this says role play. Now, role play, we're not going to do it. But when it's done in advance, then there's a request in advance that somebody plays the role of the poor communicator and feeling frustrated because you're not meeting my needs, and I had expected you to meet my needs, and the other way around. Proper communication, proper non-violent communication, ahimsa. I did this at a college once. It was really the hit of the whole. It made it really easy to understand because they picked the scenarios that college students would, likely or possibly come in contact with, and they played it out. It was really nice. So let's go back to the beginning. A common understanding of nonviolence is you don't hurt anybody, or if you have to, your existence brings inconvenience to others, you try to minimize it. Nonviolence. Don't hurt others, nonviolence. And then the higher is, if you see that somebody is in a suffering condition, nonviolence is to do something about it, especially if you know the remedy. And for the one who is situated in Gita knowledge, the suffering, the root cause of suffering is ignorance. Let's do this one. In Buddhism, the root cause of suffering is desire. Yes? Root cause of suffering is desire. So if you're a good Buddhist and you want to not suffer, you try to become free from desire. And what's the method for becoming free from desire? 2 things. Live a life of goodness, starting with ahimsa, non-violence, and charity and cleanliness and truthfulness and mode of goodness things. Frame your life in quality of goodness. And what goes inside is mindfulness, or be in the moment. And there's a teaching that goes with it. Here's the teaching that goes with it. I learned this from Jiva Goswami. There are different brands of Buddhism, but a theme that is within many or most is consciousness is simply the moment, because the past is gone and the future hasn't come. So all there is consciousness-wise is the moment. So be in the moment, be in the moment. Meditation and on being in the moment. And there's different techniques for different Buddhists, but the idea is get as close as you can to just be in the moment. And when you get really good at it, what's the goal? Ready? The goal is to go on the other side of the moment. And what's on the other side of the moment? Nirvana. What's nirvana? It's enlightenment. But nirvana, another meaning is cessation of material existence. So when material existence ceases, and the moment you're beyond the moment, what's there? Nothing, or nothingness, or void. Different nomenclature. So what's the goal? Nothing, nothingness, nirvana. The means to get there, no, going backwards. The means to get there is be in the moment. Be in the moment. Be in the moment. Mindfulness. It's buzz. It's become part of our language in Western culture. Mindfulness. The mindful manager. The mindful burger. There's a shop in downtown Chicago. The mindful burger. It's marketing. Mindful burger. So mindfulness is a Buddhist phrase. Now we also believe we aspire for mindfulness, but but mindful of what? Or, so say it differently. The root cause from the Vedic perspective, the root cause of suffering is ignorance. Because from ignorance comes ignorant desire. From ignorant desire comes ignorant activity. From ignorant activity comes suffering. The root cause of suffering is ignorance, not desire. Desire is not the problem, because desire is of the soul. It's ignorant desire that's the problem, the covering of ignorance. So what's the antidote? Knowledge. But information isn't sufficient. So now we're at the Gita values. The Ahimsa is not just don't hurt other people. Ahimsa is remove ignorance, or be an instrument to remove ignorance. And that's nonviolence. Because then people don't suffer. Unnecessary suffering is unnecessary. It's not of the soul. It's unnatural for us. It's the diseased condition. Suffering. Then how do you remove suffering? How do you remove ignorance? Knowledge. How do you get knowledge? Bhakti. From this morning's discussion, isn't it? Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayodataha Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. Knowledge arises from bhakti, one who performs bhakti. Why does it arise? Because ignorance is removed. And when ignorance is removed, what's below ignorance is knowledge. Bhakti has that power. Very nice. That's a Gita value, Ahimsa. But it's a little different than the other definition, the conventional definition. Don't hurt other people. Discussion? That's the end of the talk. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm not clear about the point that you made about the spiritual conception, how it links into fulfillment of the needs that one has.
Let me rephrase your question. Do you want to hear something further about how knowing yourself is connected to meeting your needs? Well, it's easy, but the spirit, let's say the need of love. And if I don't know who I am, then I will find another object to try to love because it's of the soul. But that's not going to fulfill me or the other entity, whether it's a person or a dog or a cat or a tree or something. If I don't know who I am and I don't know who the other entity is, then I'm not going to feel satisfied. They're not going to feel satisfied. So it's not what real love is. Or I have separate interest and they have separate interest, and so it's not real love. There's some harmony, but it's not what real love is. And you can take any other application that's a need of the soul. So where do bodies come from? According to Sankhya, bodies arise from the nature awarding the fulfillment of desire of a living entity. The guna, the desire, the quality of the desire, and their karma. So bodies are awarded. So if I have an idea of what my ultimate need is, I would want to align the covering needs, the body and the mind needs. I would like to align them, wise to align them with the spiritual needs. Say I don't align them with spiritual needs, then my spiritual need isn't going to be met because it's blocked by something. It's blocked by harsh speech or violent action towards others and killing animals and things like that. It's alignment of my spiritual needs with my physical and mental and emotional needs. It's imperative to know who you are, to have that alignment. Yes.
So, Maharaj, my humble obeisances to your lotus feet. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. My question is, Maharaj, you brought up this point about Swami Bhakti Maharaj, and you mentioned that he wanted to talk about racial discrimination with Srila Prabhupada. But again, Srila Prabhupada's perspective is, even if others consider you and speak to you in a bodily platform, you're supposed to reciprocate in a way, considering yourself as a spirit soul. Whatever may be the environmental perspective, you should not be affected by it.
Yes. The first part is not what Prabhupada said.
Okay.
The second part is what Prabhupada said.
Right.
Shouldn't be affected by it.
Shouldn't be affected by it. So that is the perspective. Even though we may see situations where people are acting in the bodily platform,
Yeah.
our perspective is, oh, probably they are ignorant and that is why they are acting in that platform. But as we understand Srila Prabhupada's teachings, and we should behave in a platform
yeah.
that is applicable for us.
Yeah.
And that way we are accepting the situation, and also we don't waste the time thinking about that, and instead we can focus on devotional service.
Yeah.
Yes, Maharaj. I just wanted to clear this.
So it's not just, and therefore we can focus on devotional service. I just turn it around the other way. Because we're focused on devotional service,
Right.
we can stay fixed in the spiritual conception. Say it negatively. If we're not fixed in a mood of service, we're not going to stay in the spiritual conception. We'll be disturbed by the anomalies on the material platform and try to make adjustments to make it nice. And it's an endless adjustment program. Lifetime after lifetime after lifetime gets never adjusted.
This also leads to various other...
And that's a partial answer to this young man's question. He went somewhere, but go ahead.
This also leads to various other good things, like you're not criticizing a devotee, you're not judging a devotee, you're not doing anything from that perspective as well, because your level of thinking is correct. So this way we are avoiding that as well.
The service that you can do for another who is in a disturbed state of mind, and therefore disturbed type of activity and speech, you can be of service to that person to the degree that you're in the mood of service in a spiritual conception. And then Super Soul can give intelligence how to best serve in that person in this circumstance. But a self-realized soul never departs from the mode of service unto Krishna. And service unto Krishna includes his part and parcel living entities, just like service to a parent is some kindness to their child. Automatically, it's service to the parent. It's included. Yeah. I'm adjusting what you said. I'm editing what you said slightly. You're looking at me like you don't get it.
Maharaj, are you talking to me? Yeah, I get it, Maharaj.
Okay.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, why don't you do the microphone running? Put your phone down. Do the micro. You speak, but when it comes to passing the microphone again, he's going to be the runner.
Maharaj, so I have just wanted to clarify my understanding about what you said is, desire is normal for soul to have. It's a normal characteristic of a soul to have
Yes,
desire.
correct.
And in order to,
And let's amplify it. In this pure state, desire is love for Krishna. And when desire is distorted, it becomes love for something else or desire for something else and something else. When ignorance covers desire, it becomes something else. But it's of the soul. So you can't extinguish the soul. You can't extinguish that which is of the soul. It's artificial. You can undergo anesthesia, but when the anesthesia wears off, you can try to do some meditation that says be in the moment and have no desire other than the moment. But it's not what consciousness is. And it's not the nature of the soul. I mean, consciousness is a nice topic. But the soul is always conscious, not moment to moment only. Anyway, go ahead.
and so basically, what I understood is the philosophy of Buddhism is
Yeah.
basically flawed because it says your ultimate goal is not having a desire. But when we follow, we say you have the desire, but your ultimate goal should be having no desire other than Krishna.
Yeah, well, it's a pure, or say, it's different. The ultimate goal is to have desire that's pure, not zero. Desire that's not covered by the modes of nature and karma, but desire that's pure. And what's that desire is pure? Service to Krishna. Love. The abode of love. The kingdom of love. Okay. Anyone else?
Maharaj, Hare Krishna. I like your lecture, Maharaj. You did a PowerPoint presentation. In that, you explained clearly about the bird cage, and you explained about the hierarchy needs, Maslow hierarchy needs.
Yes, yes.
Initially, I was when I came to US, I had this doubt, I don't belong to US. My skin color doesn't belong. I don't communicate well with others. I had all this, unable to communicate with others. So, but after a while, when I read one book, Black Lives Matter and all this, right now they are bringing up a lot of reformatory things. I understand that every living entity undergoes some situation. So I should be glad, I should be happy that I got Bhagavad Gita and understand the importance of the soul, spiritual soul. So it is all connected. Understanding the, different skin color, it's okay. We are happy.
Yes.
It's okay. We give, some people do the racial discrimination. It is okay. But it is a path of understanding who we are.
Yes. What you just said is another one of the Gita values. I mean, paraphrased, it's acceptance.
Acceptance, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj.
I guess that's it. So let us draw close to our little discussion this evening. And you have prasadam? Oh, good. Okay, prasadam time. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki.